Oh my God. By the way, if I'm sitting like this, I got a stiff neck on top of everything else, Magnus. Anyway, so what's up, everybody? Wellness Week Live. Magnus, me, Wellness Week. Don't forget, we're not giving any medical advice. Always check with the healthcare professionals. We're not giving any professional advice at all. We're just two friends talking. Okay, Magnus, topics today. When, how, and what to talk about the talk when parents have the sex talk with their kids. Right, the talk, okay? And the next topic is November is Diabetes Awareness Month. So let's get right into the thing that is good is the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and people kind of want to hear and don't want to hear, and they said this, So the sex talk, and I was saying off camera to you, Magnus, a couple of friends of mine, guy friends of mine, were talking about their kids, and they have some of my friends have preteens, some have teens, whatever, and we're just talking about like how are they handling the talk with their sons, particularly sons and daughters, but since we're both men and former teenage boys, I thought it'd be a good idea to share kind of what we went through with our parents, and you and I are the same age. And what I think, I mean, and you're an educator, Magnus, you're a teacher. So, you play an important role. Not that you're going to be having this talk with him, but you do deal with teenagers and preteens. And I'm a former teacher. I am a parent. And so, so let's start off with this, Magnus. When you were a kid, I think I know the answer because you and I are the same age. We grew up in the 80s. So, but you never know. You might surprise me. So, when you were a kid, how did your parents even talk to you about not only sex as it pertains to biology, but sex like how to protect yourself from disease, what is permission, how to deal with the opposite sex or the same sex? Like, what did your parents talk to you or do for you?
So I think that's the difference between like looking at American and Swedish culture. It's a huge difference because uh, here in the States there's so much about sex becomes so taboo. In Sweden it's not. It's something that basically we like you kind of grew up with in some way or form. I mean, I remember us, I think it was somewhere like, even it might have been kindergarten or something like that. There was basically this book, like sex educational books for kids, you know
So, but
and
the teachers talked to you. Your parents didn't talk to you about it?
yeah, yes, they did. If looking back at it, was it good or bad? Probably not the best. Uh, and also, like, we got exposed to it with sexual education fairly early in school as well.
Now,
So
when you say at school as well,
yeah,
were they teaching you in Sweden in the 1980s and 90s? Were they
yeah.
teaching you about sex like purely biological and molecular, or were they saying, well, when a woman touches a man or a man touches a woman, like were they getting into the social aspect of sex or just strictly science?
Both, I would
Oh,
say. Actually, yeah. Like social
Sweden.
aspect, it's way more nowadays because we have it. Like, I would say that both science and we have become way more open about it. But we're talking about we're talking about um, basically protection, things like that, a whole lot of things. So, like, looking back at it, it's like it's such a long time ago too, so I would say that my memory is probably not the best
All right. So,
either.
how did your parents handle it? Did they get into the nitty gritty with you, or they were just like, you better be careful?
No, me and my dad had to talk, and my mom had to talk with me too. Well, I would say, well, my dad talked more about it, but it's yeah. I mean, he gave me not all details, of course, but kind of like, yeah, basically what happens and so on and things like that. Is it awkward? Yes, but I think that's why it's so important to start early, because and kind of remove the taboo. And like, I think it's again hilarious because, like, for me, when parents is like, oh, there might be a sex scene or something like that in a movie, and you have someone that is like a preteen, like young teenager, and they're still trying to, like, oh, stop it, or try to cover their eyes or leave the room or press the pause or whatever. I think that is completely wrong. And it's the same thing. If you're not talking about it, it becomes even more mystified, and when you're trying to hide things for kids, they become way more interested in it than if you just open about it straight up.
Right. Okay. So, well, it sounds like your parents were
I, I
definitely
I would say the same thing when it comes to drugs. I mean, like you can protect your kid as much as you want. Sooner or later, they're gonna get exposed to everything. So, and especially now in the day of internet, like we have young kids watching porn, eh, like way too early, for instance, because it's available online,
right.
for instance, and that's not sex ed.
Right.
That's a horrendous way for a person to learn about sexuality and sex, is watching porn. And
Of
I
course.
think that's so important, that why parents need to start earlier than they think they do.
Right. So yeah, kudos to your
Let me hear
parents.
about your experience.
Thank you. Yeah, kudos to your parents because my parents didn't say shit to me. And that's, my parents are good people. Overall, my parents are good parents. They were good parents raising us. But when it came to the sex thing, like a lot of parents, doesn't absolve my parents, but my parents dropped the ball. They taught me zero.
Yeah,
And by luck, basically, and by my own fruition, I navigated waters and kept out of trouble. Um, you know, physically, mentally, spiritually, legally, whatever. But yeah, my parents did me a big disservice, and my brothers, because again, it's not to say they're bad people or bad parents, because they're not. But in this particular area, they dropped the ball. Not only did they not talk to us about sex, my mother made anything to do about sexuality, even like kissing, making out. We're not even talking about intercourse yet. A sin, a sin. You're gonna go to hell. Gun, dun, dun. You wait till marriage, or else you're gonna go to hell. And it's like, that's fucked up. That's
yeah,
not
it
right.
is fucked up.
It's
Yeah,
fucked up.
I
And
agree.
I look back as an adult and as a parent, and I understand now. I forgive my mother. I know where she's coming from. Immigrant person, not educated. My mother is someone who's afraid of the world, and I'm not making fun of her. I'm not putting her down. That's a fact.
Yeah.
She would probably agree with this. And she put that on us, and that set us up for big problems. And I thank God I didn't get into any big problems, but there are people in my family and in my extended family that got into big problems because
Yeah.
their parents or family did not have the talk. And so,
I
um,
mean, looking at it too, like, is it better that you have like teenage pregnancy involved, or
disease.
disease? I was gonna add that. That was
You
my
you you
second
you want
point.
you want you want chlamydia, you want AIDS, you want herpes. Okay, my parents put me out there. They sent me off to war with no gun, no training, no not, and and I know a lot of people that because their parents didn't have a talk, their sons and daughters got you know uh, pregnant at 15, 16, 17,
Yeah,
18, 19, got diseases, and now I understand we have to make our own decisions. But when you don't even have a talk with your kid, that is a disservice. That's a sin. Okay.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so, and to
yeah.
say, oh, don't do it, wait till marriage, that's just so fucking just bad. And
Well,
again, I get why
yeah.
people do that. I'm not judging, but it's just wrong. And that doesn't abdicate your responsibility. By the way, so where did I learn where did I learn about sex, Magnus? I learned from movies, okay?
Yeah,
The
of
street,
course.
the street,
Yeah,
okay? I learned from my fellow 13-year-olds
yeah,
and so I learned everything wrong. I learned nothing. And so by the grace of God, I just happened to be a very well thought out, methodical, safe type of person for the most part, with a little bit of common sense. But again, you can't throw a kid out there because not everybody's going to have the common sense or the discipline that I had or the curiosity to kind of read in a book myself what I should do and
yeah.
not do. Parents. Sorry, you got to take the ball on this. And so I learned the wrong way. And now kids have what? They have the phone. Woo-hoo! They are learning everything wrong. So, Magnus, when I became a parent, okay, I had to talk with my son when he was about 12, 13, and I made sure I had to talk with him when we were in the car. So he couldn't run. So we were driving down the
Perfect.
highway, and you ain't going anywhere, buddy. I got you. Do I want to have this talk? I do not. I do not. It's totally icky and
But I think,
uncomfortable, and nobody
yeah,
wants to do it. But do I want my son? Do I want my daughter to get a disease or get pregnant or get, you know, um, I, that. And then, by the way, I also talked to my son about what is permission, because let's be honest,
Yeah.
not, anybody can get raped. Guys can get raped too, but let's be honest, 98% of rapes are men doing it to women. Okay, so that means parents didn't have continual talks or the talk with their sons. So I made sure I talked to my son and I said to him, listen, not only are we going to talk about condom use, we're going to talk about how what gives you how diseases, and also obviously I said, son, I want you, preferably it'd be nice if you waited to marriage, and it'd be nice if you waited till you got old enough to take care of your own business, but you still got to have that talk. And parents who are going to say, well, having the talk and talking about condoms and prophylactics, that's just giving them permission. No, that's so fucking stupid. That's like saying wearing a seatbelt is giving you permission to go fucking drag racing. No, you wear a seatbelt. Why? In case, because somebody else might hit you, or you might mess up or lose control. Well, that's why you talk about it. No one's saying buy your kid porn movies and stuff, but you talk about it, and you talk about even just making out, like how diseases are transmitted, and we're not even talking about AIDS, but also more important, equally important, Magnus, I would say parents need to talk about to their boys permission. What is permission? Because just because someone says, well, the girl didn't say no, so just because the girl didn't say no doesn't mean
that she said yes.
Correct. So I told my son, listen, we talked about, yes, verbal permission, but also in non-verbal permission, like, so body language, if a girl is kind of like scooting away from you or not making eye contact, or she's clearly not that into you, or, she's seems nervous or stuttering, like, that's a no. And if the girl says no, that is a no. It's not, yep. Oh yeah, no, she's just talking, she really wants it. No. And I told my son, like, if I ever hear that you in any shape, form, fashion, or way or level, were rude to a girl out there, or disrespectful, or tried to kind of sort of maybe push yourself, maybe kind of, you better move to another planet, because you'll feel my wrath. Like, don't I told him, you respect every woman, every girl, like their dad's the president of the United States, or you respect every girl like their dad is the godfather of a mafia, like like that. Like, you would never disrespect the president's daughter. You would never disrespect a daughter who was the daughter of a mafia godfather. Well, that's how you should respect and treat every single woman on earth. I told my son. So, and then we talked about that permission. What is nonverbal? What is verbal? No means no. And he understood. I just wanted to make that claro and iron that out with him. And I told him, I said, I love you. I never want you to be in a bad position. And I also know that back to the sex thing, we talked about condom use, and we talked about how to put on a condom. Like, obviously I didn't demonstrate, but we talked about the right way to use a condom, and all those things. And
so you were not blowing balloon animals with
them? No balloon animals, no. But and my son was freaking out. Dad, this is so uncomfortable. Shut up now. I said, Tim, I got to talk. I don't want to do it, but I got to talk to you.
Yeah.
So this is important, because my parents never had that talk with me, and I want the best for you. I love you, and I told him that. So this is not. I go, you think I want to have this conversation? I go, Tim, you probably know a lot of this already. Maybe not, but I want to feel like I did the best I could. And so I did that, and I was very happy I did that, and I know. Later in his life, I know he appreciated it, and kids will say, I don't want to hear it. But parents, you have to do it.
Yeah.
There's no, and you have to get detailed. You have to know, like, hey, if you do this type of sex, I'm not going to get, then you have higher chances for certain diseases versus this type of sex, if you know what I mean, folks. If you, if you're drinking, or a young woman is drinking and she's like, yeah, let's do it, but something's not right. She's maybe slurring her speech, or she's a little buzzed. Don't do it, even if she says she wants to. This person is drinking, or they're under the influence of pot or coke or crack. Like, no, like stuff like that. You have to explicitly tell your son, particularly, and we're talking about it because we're two men, okay? But women too. You have to have the sex talk with the women. It's a little bit different of a talk, but you have to have it. And I think both parents should talk about it, because you have a lot of women that'll say, hey, honey, husband, talk to your son about the sex talk. No. It's the husband should talk, and the wife should talk, because they're having sex with they're encountering multiple, different sexes. So yeah, and if it was a girl, I think the conversation should be obviously how to be safe, this, not get diseases, birth control. But what happens if a guy pushes himself on you? A lot of women, a lot of girls never want to talk about not only rape, that they've been raped, but they don't want to talk about that they've been sexually assaulted or groped
Yeah.
because they are embarrassed. And so they keep that in their, they never talk about it ever in their whole life. And if I had a daughter, I would say, honey, you tell us we love you and you're not wrong. You should not be ashamed. We want to know if a boy touches you the wrong way or gropes you or, God forbid, rapes. Like, and, to people out there that say, well, why is she coming up with this rape allegation 30 years later? Like it didn't have, like she's lying. People, when someone is raped or sexually abused, and I know some people in my sphere that have been in my sphere of friends and people that I know, it's embarrassing. You're ashamed. You're hurt. It's horrific. Who the hell wants to talk about it again and again? Or so for people who say like, oh, well, it didn't happen, why is she coming out now? That's so fucking stupid. Like, the shame, and unless you've been sexually groped or harassed or raped, or someone that has, really shut your mouth. Like, so, but I would tell, if I had a daughter, you also have permission. If a boy pushes himself on you, you have, kick him, fight.
Yeah, defend yourself.
Yeah, and if you don't have that moxie in you to defend yourself, then you go to the police, or you come to mom and dad, or you come to your family. You have you have to give them permission to speak and empower themselves too.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't ever come to that as well.
No,
that you
right,
actually get
right.
stopped beforehand. But
Right.
I mean, it's so important that like we're talking about kids growing up, that they start learning things about that. It's the same thing as under like people understanding how to pay bills and everything like that.
Right.
This is just something that you need to know growing up about it.
Right.
And I think now, like, we can say a lot about the internet and things like that, but there's so much help nowadays to go through this talk. They're like, you can watch video clips when they're talking about it. You can watch together. I just want to add something when it comes to that. As a parent, watch the video beforehand so you don't get caught in any surprise, so you can go through it and then discuss it and have basically like press pause and discuss things,
Right.
like it's and it's the same thing. Like, the more you're trying to put some kind of like gag on it and not talk about it, the harder it's gonna get.
Yeah, I would say
I think that is why it's so important to maybe like have a conversation, and also maybe have a conversation over several years.
Yeah, right. It's an ongoing conversation, right? It's not one conversation. You have to have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And Magnus, I would say, really, to have that conversation at about 12 to 13 years old, not at 17. At 17, forget it. They're already having sex and what?
Can I add something there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, since I'm working in a middle school, like, we have kids trying to have sex on campus. They're trying to hide away, have sex, sneak away from class and things like that. And we're talking middle schoolers. Like, if you're not having that conversation before that, it might already be too late.
Right.
And that's it's so important to have that also, and also like having an understanding about sexuality too, and also talking more about like, hey, what does this lead to, and also like, why do you have sex? Like, there's many reasons to have sex, but one of the main reasons should be because you connect with a specific person in ways, and it's like just wasting away, just having sex for have sex. I mean, yeah, of course people want to do that, but like having an understanding that it could be way more special than that.
Right. Yeah, and talking about feelings, right, with your kids, like, hey, right, and talking about not only the permission and the biology of it, but right, that you're gonna the feelings attached to that.
Yeah.
Because we're humans, and we try to act like, especially guys, like, what? There's no feelings. Hey, I just had sex. Men, we're human too. So, but by the way, any parent out there that thinks, because there's always these parents, not my child, not my daughter, not my son, they know better. Our religion says, here we go. I promise you. And I understand there's always that mother out there that, like, well, I didn't do that, so my child, well, you might not have. And you think you know your kid. You might know your kid 80%. You don't know everything about your kid. And
There's a different time now. I can
yeah,
guarantee
and so
you. There's completely different new
any parent that thinks
generations.
not my kid, that's so stupid. And you, even if it's not your kid, have some kind of conversation. It doesn't have to be the conversation I had, but say something. Don't just be like, oh, don't wait till you get married. That's the highest abortion rates are among Christian women. Okay, and let me tell, I promise you, there are Christian women, and I'm sure Jewish women and Muslim women and Hindu women that go to their temple every Saturday, Sunday, Friday, and they're having sex. Okay, trust me when I tell you. So like again, even if you can just have some kind of conversation with your kid, mom and dad, something is better than nothing. Because my parents gave me nothing, and yeah, I mean, because if you don't talk to your kids, guess who's going to talk to them? Their friends, the internet.
The worst
You want that? You want that?
information you can get.
Right. And anyways, so that's important, and it's yeah, it's needed. I don't know. I and you could talk about affection versus sex. And there's a lot to talk about. Like you said, you brought up a good point, Magnus. Having maybe continual conversations. Because if you just put your head in the sand and act like, oh, not my child, or our religion says you're abdicating your responsibility, don't hide behind your holy book. That's a no-no. That's immature. You have to be a parent. You got to talk to them in whatever way you can. Okay, but you can't act like it says it in this book here. Talk to them. At least talk to them with the book there. I mean, something. Anyways, all right, Max. Anything else before we move on to diabetes?
Let's move on to diabetes. Again, like super important topic to talk to your kids about. The earlier the better, I would say. And also, like, just be honest. If you watch a TV show where they like you go into having a sex scene or something like that, say it's like, well, they're having sex, it's natural. And I think that, like, trying to remove the taboo from it, it's super important.
True. Because we act like it's evil to have sex, and,
Yeah.
and you'll have people give lip service. Oh no, like in my church, they'll say like, oh, sex is a beautiful thing in marriage. Otherwise, you're going to hell. It's like, come on, man. Like, don't do that shit. Like, sex is a beautiful thing. Period, marriage or not. But you could, if you're religious, you can say we believe to wait till marriage. And but honey, I want to talk to you, or buddy, I want to talk to you, son, daughter, about what's out there, and
Yeah.
like, you can't just hide behind your book. You're abdicating your responsibility. Okay, diabetes. All right, so
Diabetes.
November's diabetes month. You got type 1, type 2. Type 1 you're born with, type 2 you give yourself, and unfortunately most Americans have type 2. No one deserves it. I'm not saying you deserve it, but Magnus, this is another one. It's like we do it to ourselves, type 2 particularly. It's just like, it's so sad. And I have people in my family, people I love, they're just fucking killing themselves. And it's like, I have a friend of mine.
Yeah. Nowadays, I mean, looking at it, it's not type 2. I mean, it's more lifestyle. It's more lifestyle diabetes. It's like your lifestyle causes you to become sick. And
Well, that's type 2, right?
Yeah. And we like, we have to be honest about this. I mean, I hate to say this, but most of those cases are actually happening because a person has lived a specific lifestyle for a long time, when we haven't taken care of our health, eating correctly, not moving enough, whatever it is. Like, and of course, something like genes have something to do with it, but constantly saying, oh, it's in my family, or it's just my genetics. Well, no, it's because you're mimicking the lifestyle of your family, most likely.
That's what my family say. Oh, it runs in our family. No, it doesn't. Nobody in my family has type 1 diabetes. That's genetic. Type 2 is not genetic. Type 2 is pasta, bread, chips, cake, cookies, bagels, muffins, more sitting, alcohol, sit, more pasta bread. That gives you fucking type 2 diabetes. And by the way, the good news is you can turn it around, folks. That's the beautiful news. Magnus, I got a friend of mine. He's got type 2. And he says, why would I stop? I'm just taking this, medicine, And I'm like, oh, okay. And then he tells me, every whatever it is, every other month or something, he has to get his blood tested just to kind of see where he's at, if he needs other medications. I'm like, dude, you're going through all of this shit. why don't you just put down the fried food and alcohol and over processed carbs? Like, like look at all the shit you're putting yourself through for what? You would feel so much better if old habits die hard, man.
Anthony, we talked about this before. It's choose your heart, right? Yeah, it's hard to eat uh, broccoli and stay away from the soda, but it actually sucks having diabetes. I
Right.
would
And
say
by the
that
way,
is worse.
right. And when you eat broccoli and vegetables and get off the alcohol and get off the pasta bread, it's not a punishment. You're going to feel amazing. And you need carbohydrates from
Yeah,
fruits and vegetables, not from pasta bread, cake, cookies, chips. But no. So people act like it's a punishment. No, you're going to be alive. You're going to feel $1,000,000. But yeah, so it's so sad. But,
yeah.
by the way, type 1 diabetics also have to obviously watch their diet too. You can't just say, well, I'm type 1. I can't do anything about it. So fuck it. I'm just going to eat. No, you can't do that either. You got to be
Well,
very.
everybody got to watch their diet. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. You might have awesome genes, so you can eat whatever and nothing happens. But it's not about that. It's like longevity and feeling good long term. You have to. I mean, it's the same thing. The middle aisle of a store, that's where you find all, like, well, let's call it garbage food, highly processed. And you and I, we constantly, like, we share stuff on Facebook and things like that, talk about it. Is that we constantly see this enormous intake of processed food, and we have kids that can't even, like, if I pull up a vegetable, they can't even name it. They don't know what it is. They don't know what it looks like. They don't know what it is, and of course they don't want to eat it because it's like they're not exposed to it. And it's the same thing. Like, as a parent, you just go over. You find ways of getting vegetables in there and exposed to it. Like, the earlier you're exposed to them and kind of keep away the sugar and candy and stuff like that, the better off they are, because they learn how to eat natural whole food.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I understand, like, yes, sometimes we go get a pizza or we go get some fast food or stuff like that. I completely understand that.
Right.
But when the majority becomes eating, like,
Right.
this stuff, of course we're gonna have issues of so many people being overweight and having diabetes as like at fault, like, it's
Right.
we fall down to it.
Yeah. I was gonna say, Magnus. And by the way, when people have type 2 diabetes or even type 1, but when you have diabetes, I think sometimes people think like, oh yeah, diabetes is a sugar problem. Good go, hey, sugar problem. Ding, bing, bang, boom. No, when you have diabetes, guess what? Now you have a much, much higher chance of getting cancers, multiple cancers when you have diabetes. You have a higher chance of getting heart disease when you have diabetes. You have a higher chance of having bone issues when you. So this is
You have a higher risk of actually having to amputate body parts.
right. So, but I think people think, well, diabetes is just a sugar thing in the blood. No, it's a cancer thing. It's a heart disease thing. Right. It destroys you, but people don't see that.
But it's the same thing. Like, look at the same thing with we talked about smoking and drinking and things like that. People, like, we obviously know that, like, it's dangerous from all the research coming out, but still people are constantly doing it. And this is
Yeah.
the same thing. And it's this, like, entitlement of, like, I can eat whatever I want and, like, drink how much I want and things like that are definitely causing a big problem, because very few people can get away with that long term.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah.
And
So
like, and pointing it out, like, even if we have a whole month when we're talking about, like, diabetes, we're still just scratching the surface. We're not getting across to people on how dangerous it is.
oh yeah.
And people are just kind of enable themselves to say, oh no, but it's okay, I just, like you said, I just take a couple of pills and I can continue doing whatever I used to do. No, you can't. You're masking the problem. You continue feeding the source of the problem, and you're making it worse.
Yeah, and you're hurting your family. You want to be around
Yeah.
for your kids? Yes or no? You want to be around to see their wedding? Well, then, I mean, there's no excuses. I don't want to hear it. Again, water is cheaper than soda and alcohol. You can start off with that. But anyways,
yeah, but looking at it too, like, if it goes, it's like, okay, it's hard having, we just like talking about it, the talk, sex talk. Well, like this is something that you should talk with your kids too, and something you should actually talk to yourself to if you have an issue. It's like, hey, like the food I'm eating is causing me to get sick.
Right. But we like putting our head in the sand, right? For everything, right? Right. The
Yeah.
sex talk, health talk, money talk. Nobody really wants to I get it. I don't want to face shit either. I don't, it's a hassle or I'm scared. But what's the alternative? Like anyways.
Getting really, really sick, in worst case scenario, dying.
Yeah. Magnus, I'm done. Anything for you, buddy, before we wrap up?
Yeah, I like, again, with diabetes, we have to become way better. Everybody, we like, and we have to be more involved in this, and because it's causing so much problem in our society today.
Yeah,
it is, and it's just getting worse. And
Yeah.
and me working with kids, seeing how poor eating habits and activity habits they have, basically lifestyle, I cry on the inside every single day.
Yeah, and this doesn't have to happen. And again, saying I don't have money, that's not an excuse. Like I said, water's cheaper than alcohol and soda. I mean, but and that's a big one. Anyway, so all right, Magnus, thank you very much, man. I know you're busy, and thank you for.
So are
thank
you.
Yeah, thank you, Southern California and the Jersey out here. Check back in, folks. A lot of great content, and
Subscribe.
yeah, like and subscribe.
Like, comment, share this with another person that might find this of interest, and yeah, we want to hear more about you guys.
Thanks, guys. All right, Magnus. Thank you, guys. I'm signing us off. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye.